What's going on, everyone? Now, we've seen these type of videos before, but I'm curious to see how he does this. He says how the PlayStation 4, though, is a different title, won the last ever console war. Now, if we think about it in a certain sense, I would say yes, because it pretty much did end there in a sense if you think about that digital carryover. And even Phil Spencer admitted, like, I don't care what you guys were thinking, this generation, the Series X was, or the Series X and S were never going to beat Sony when it comes to hardware sales. It was over with last gen, and that's very true. So see what this guy has to say. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think.
In 2013, Microsoft made a mistake so catastrophic it handed Sony the entire generation. This is the complete story of how PlayStation 4 won the console war.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why I don't understand why some people were saying it's Phil Spencer. So I'm like, no, he pretty much grabbed a crazy train. Like, who ruined everything was Don Matrick.
The 8th generation of consoles began with one of the most spectacular corporate disasters in gaming history. On May 2013, Microsoft gathered gaming press, industry analysts and Xbox fans at their Redmond campus for what should have been a triumphant moment. Instead, they delivered a presentation so tone-deaf and anti-consumer that it would define their struggles for the entire generation.
Yeah.
The first red flag came with the event's focus. Rather than leading with games, Microsoft spent the majority of their hour-long presentation discussing television integration, NFL partnerships, and Skype functionality.
Yeah, that guys I never understood. Like, it's like, hold on, how did the 360 blow up? You know what I mean? How did the 360 do so well with your identity? You know what I mean? Then they came here with people who I'm like, "Oh, okay, these are just dumb Microsoft suits that don't know anything about gaming. And they came in with everything that had nothing to do with gaming to try to promote at the biggest promotion of all time, coming off of your biggest hype. You know what I mean? And growth. And you came with all this stuff where it's like, dude, this is available everywhere else. That's not why people get an Xbox. Like, what are you doing here? You know what I mean? It was ridiculous. On top of the DRM stuff, I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. Why are you guys just handing them everything? So did Sony defeat Microsoft? If you ask me, straight up 100%, no. Microsoft defeats themselves a lot,
TV, TV and movies, TV.
whether they
Xbox,
won or not.
watch TV, 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 TV.
Mhm.
TV, TV, watch TV, TV, TV and TV remote, TV experience, TV, 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 sports TV, TV, TV. Anybody?
Don Matrick, then president of interactive entertainment business, seemed more interested in positioning Xbox One as an entertainment system rather than a gaming console. Even when announcing the Xbox One,
Give me some more
he
powder.
called it the new entertainment system.
Today, we're thrilled to unveil the ultimate all-in-one home entertainment system. The one with the power to create experiences that look and feel like nothing else. The one that makes your TV more intelligent. The one system for a new generation. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Xbox One.
Throughout the presentation, they reinforced the idea that this console was more about the TV aspect of it rather than the gaming. But the presentation was just the beginning. In the days and weeks following the reveal, Microsoft's executives seemed determined to alienate every potential consumer. The DRM situation was equally dystopian. Microsoft initially planned to require players to log into the console and connect it to the internet every 24 hours to verify game licenses.
That's why I never understood why anybody that was an Xbox fanboy would ever come and say anything about the Switch 2 keycard in 2025, when 12 years prior to that, Microsoft said you couldn't even play offline for more than 24 hours. You had to be online. They were trying to push that way back then. So I was like, oh, we going to my anti-consumer, man. Don't even get me started. Them and NVIDIA were always the worst. And Microsoft at one point was far beyond worse than anybody. And that gives you the idea again. It was like, so you built up that 360 success after all you guys supported that. Plus, they gave you all those red ring of death consoles, even though the 360 era was still good, but they still were manipulating a lot. Then they had the audacity to try to do that in 2013 to get rid of physical like that and restrict you like that. It's like, oh boy, like just everything about that. It was like, why are you doing this? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, just like you look at some things they do this year, it's like every time when you think about Microsoft, you're like, unbelievable, right? NVIDIA is doing unbelievable stuff too. But I mean, yeah, this is what I mean by like they pretty much destroyed themselves to be competitive. Not to say that you needed to outsell Sony, but it could have been a lot better and a lot more interesting, and gaming could have been a lot more higher at its peak. You know, you had that American identity. Then you just dropped a Call of Duty nuclear bomb on it. Yeah.
For those who may not have access to an internet connection, the console became pointless. It also affected used games. Games would now be tied to one account, which restricted sharing and selling games, something that has always been a fundamental part of console gaming.
So you see what I mean? Sony had it to where, like, prior to that, PlayStation 3 Online was free. You could share multiple things. And then, like, when they get some of these ideas from them, you notice it's like, it's these greedy ideas. Now you're paying for online. Now you can't share like you could before. Netflix ended up doing it way later. But look who was doing all this stuff first, charging for online. I was going to say, like, it's like these things where it's like, yeah, if you really go back and take a look at what they're doing, and Nintendo was not charging for online. The Wii was great. The 3DS was great. It even allowed you to hack into it, mod the hell out of it. Everything. Things were super cheap. Who's the anti-consumer one? Microsoft. It's the decisions. That's what life is all about when it comes to things. It's not about money like you think it is. No, it's about choices. People are in the positions that they are. The world is in the position that it's in because since the beginning, everybody has made choices that have added up to everything that is manifested here right now. And every choice Microsoft has made them to what Xbox is right now. The other one's making the choices. You know what I mean? Imagine if they would have made better choices. You would have saw different consequences. So it's about these choices. And every time you see things like, even when we look at today, why are you in last place to move out of China into Vietnam when Sony was there years ago? Nintendo was there in 2018. You're supposed to be AI data leading, right? But you missed all these deals. You stormed out the building angry the other day. You just see them do things like the way they jack up the price, put in Game Pass. Like, why are you doing these things? You were first on Copilot. You start looking at some of these companies' decisions. You start to realize, like I said, it's these dumb choices that they make to completely destroy themselves. And Sony doesn't make those dumb choices. Like Sony has DRAM ready for mid 2026 to take care of that. Nintendo did certain good things as well too, but somehow Microsoft who's supposed to be supplied on that, definitely because you're supposed to be leading in an AI aspect, it's not doing it. Yeah, I'll tell you that this company just makes terrible decisions, and then you wonder if these people like how do you have all that money but no brains when it comes to the most important things?
This affected game stores too. GameStop saw a drop in the stock prices after the announcement went live. For many people, this left a truly sour taste in their mouths.
Yeah.
Microsoft later walked back some of these restrictions, but the damage to trust was irreparable. Adam Orff's Twitter meltdown became the face of Microsoft's arrogance. When questioned about always online requirements, the Xbox executive suggested critics should deal with it and compared internet outages to electricity going out, ignoring that consoles had worked without internet for decades. His deal with it hashtag was just a sign of how tone deaf Xbox were at this time. Don Matrick's response was somehow even.
People were saying how they felt about that back then when it came to that type of stuff. If we fast forward 12 years later now and we see things like, remember where some of these original ideas came from in the gaming industry.
Even worse though, when asked about customers without reliable internet access, he suggested they should stick with the Xbox 360, essentially telling a significant portion of their potential market that they weren't welcome on the new platform.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message. If you don't,
Well,
people don't like it.
if you have zero access
Yeah.
to the internet, that is an offline device. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously.
Yeah,
I
we're
mean,
already
that
there.
sure
anyways.
is a great
Guys, that there too. It's like, I'm trying to promote a new product here that I want everybody to migrate to as much as possible. And then he says that, like, when you really think about all these decisions, this is why it's good to review things. You get more older, you get more wiser, you're able to peer deeper into these decisions, and then you reflect back on that moment and come back here now, and then you're like, wait, did you just say that, bro? After everything else? And then the guy leaves and goes to Zyka, and he has that smile on his face, and it's like, unbelievable. Bro just murdered everything and left. Like, and then Phil Spencer came, like, and he's supposed to be the guy in the white horse who was going to save Xbox, but he did what he could, and like I said, I ain't gonna blame him because it's like, what can you really do after that? It's kind of hard to recover from that. I mean, I don't know, man.
Great way to attract people to buy your new console. The $499 price point felt like the final insult though.
That Xbox One will launch this November in 21 markets around the world at $499 in the US and 499 euros in European markets and 429 pounds in the UK.
That $100 increase over the PlayStation 4 wasn't about buying better hardware, it was actually quite the opposite.
Yeah, they did that. They included a Connect. It was $100 more than the PS4. Think about all these mistakes. Nobody cared about Connect 2, by the way, too. And the PlayStation 4 was $399, and it was more powerful. See what I mean? Yeah, and Sony is way more intelligent when it comes to hardware manufacturing and design.
It was more about funding the mandatory Kinect sensor than many people didn't want anyway. Microsoft had made Kinect a necessity that no one wanted. Then, 3 weeks later, Sony took the stage at E3 2013 and delivered one of the most devastating counterattacks.
They capitalized big time.
Everything about their presentation was calculated to exploit Microsoft's wounds while positioning PlayStation as the gamer-friendly alternative. The brilliance began with their brief official PlayStation used game instructional video, which quickly became a viral sensation. PlayStation demonstrated the complex process of sharing their games. Yoshida handed a disc to Boyce who said, "Thanks."
Thanks.
PlayStation.
The 22-second video gained millions of views and perfectly captured the
Simply
absurdity
simple.
of Microsoft's restrictions through simple contrast. Then came Andrew Houser's presentation, which was a masterclass in timing and messaging. Rather than spending time attacking Microsoft directly, Sony simply stated their policies. PlayStation 4 games would work offline, wouldn't require internet check-ins, and wouldn't restrict used game sales. Each statement received applause as the audience quickly realised Sony was systematically dismantling every Xbox One complaint, whilst also making Xbox look completely stupid because of those decisions.
Correct. While Microsoft was tone deaf, is usually when it comes to things, Sony came in and capitalized on everything gamers want. Capitalize on that without even talking about them, saying you can play your stuff offline, you can share games so easily. PlayStation 4 Share Play was coming as well too. And then they did $399. Like they just looked at him and said, "Oh, you just made this easy for me, and I'm gonna take your Call of Duty rights and everything." It's like, yeah, man.
Equally focused on delivering what gamers want most, without imposing restrictions or devaluing their PS4 purchases. For instance, PlayStation 4 won't impose any new restrictions on the use of PS4 gamers. PlayStation 4 disc-based games don't need to be connected online to play.
Nope.
Or for any type of authentication. If you enjoy playing single-player games offline, PS4 won't require you to check in online periodically.
I remember that. I was there.
And it won't stop working if you haven't authenticated within 24 hours.
The $399 price announcement was the final nail in the coffin. Once the price was revealed, the crowd erupted. The reaction was so immediate and sustained that House had to wait for the cheers to die down before continuing, and in that moment, Sony had positioned themselves as the main console a gamer should buy.
And will continue to offer the best value on the market. I'm very proud to announce that PlayStation 4 will be available at $399. €399, and for the folks in my homeland, £349 sterling.
The PS4 was everything the Xbox wasn't. Xbox in a way handed the win to Sony themselves by delivering such a tone-deaf presentation. All that Sony had to do was simply use those mistakes as their main marketing campaign, and that's exactly what they did. Sony's aggressive positioning at E3 was particularly powerful because it came from a company that had nearly destroyed their own gaming division just a generation earlier. The PlayStation 3 launch had been a disaster class that rivaled the Xbox One's mistakes. The PS3 launched in November 2006 at $499 for the 20GB model and $599 for the 60GB version. The PlayStation 3 was priced out of reach for most people. Ken Kitaragi's infamous quote where he said that consumers would work extra hours to afford a PS3 felt tone deaf. The PlayStation Network just wasn't as good when compared to Xbox Live's integrated online experience either. Sony's late entry into online gaming left them scrambling to match Microsoft's infrastructure, resulting in a service that felt stitched together rather than designed. The catastrophic 2011 PSN hack, which exposed millions of customer records and shut down the server 23 days, represented the rock bottom of Sony's online efforts. By 2010, the PlayStation 3 had sold around 40 million units compared to Xbox 360's 50 million, and the Nintendo Wii sold around 70. For a company that dominated the previous two console generations with the PlayStation and PlayStation 2, this represented an existential crisis. The PlayStation brand had become associated with expensive hardware, difficult development, and corporate arrogance. Sony Computer Entertainment underwent massive internal changes following the PS3's struggles. Kaz Hirari's promotion to CEO brought a more humble, gamer-focused approach. The hiring of Mark Cerny as lead architect for PlayStation 4 signalled Sony's commitment to developer-friendly hardware. Jack Tretton's increased prominence in marketing represented a shift toward more authentic, passionate communication with gaming communities. PlayStation 4's victory wasn't built solely on Microsoft's mistakes, although there is no denying that Xbox shot themselves in the foot and definitely helped Sony. It also wouldn't be fair to say that Sony didn't earn their success with the PS4. Through
Correct. That's why I was saying that it isn't just what Sony did, because they would have won anyways, but Xbox One could have been a lot better if Microsoft wouldn't have forced to connect, focused on TV, and did DRM, and it was price matching the PlayStation. Because it's $100 more with the Force Connect, and the PlayStation 4 had 1.8 teraflops almost, and they had like 1.4. Or 3. Yeah, I was like, no. This is a more powerful console.
Superior strategy, execution, and an unwavering focus on what gamers actually wanted, the PS4 was just a more appealing choice. From 2013 to 2020, Sony executed one of the most dominant console generations in gaming history, establishing advantages in hardware, software, developer relations, and market positioning that would define the entire generation. The fundamental difference between PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is that they represented two entirely different visions of what a gaming console should be. Microsoft's approach prioritized the living room experience, viewing gaming as one component of a broader entertainment ecosystem. Sony's approach prioritized the development experience, viewing everything else as secondary to creating the best possible gaming machine. Mark Cerny's role as PlayStation 4's lead architect was crucial to this philosophy. He brought decades of game development experience to the project. His resume included classics like Marble Madness, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Crash Bandicoot, and Jak and Daxter. When he spoke about hardware requirements, he understood the practical realities of game development in ways that traditional engineers couldn't. Cerny's development process was unprecedented in console history. Rather than designing hardware in isolation and expecting developers to adapt the way other game consoles were made, he spent over 2 years conducting interviews with major studios worldwide. He asked detailed questions about memory bandwidth, GPU compute units, storage requirements, and development tool preferences. The PlayStation 4's architecture reflected direct feedback from the developers who would ultimately create its software library. The technical specifications told a clear story. PlayStation 4's AMD APU included 8 CPU cores running at 1.6 GHz, but more importantly it featured 18 compute units in its GPU compared to Xbox One's 12. The memory configuration was even more significant. 8GB of GDDR5 RAM with 176GB of bandwidth completely outclassed Xbox One's complex combination of 8GB DDR3 RAM plus 32MB of ESRAM.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that as well. Yeah, I mean they completely got schooled, and PlayStation was running games at much better settings than the Xbox One at that time too, and everybody knew that too. And then not only that, Sony had dropped the PS4 Pro, and had that be $399 and the regular would be $299. Microsoft had to do a lot of price drops to start matching them, and then they ended up coming out with an Xbox One X. Sony did a really good job that generation for sure. I mean, it started off slow for both with the crashing and the errors and all that, but once things got down and got rolling, it was pretty nice. No doubt about that.
These differences translated to real-world performance advantages. The Xbox One's memory architecture required developers to manually manage between slow DDR3 and fast ESRAM, adding complexity that many studios struggled with throughout the generation. PlayStation 4's unified memory pool allowed developers to focus on creating games rather than wrestling with hardware limitations. The PlayStation 4's hardware was remarkable, and it's easy to look back and say that graphics peaked towards the end of its life cycle. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and The Last of Us Part 2 looked and still do look incredible, and it shows just how powerful the console truly was. However, the one thing that I believe truly defined the generation of PlayStation and the PlayStation 4 was its exclusive titles. The generation began with The Last of Us, although that is a PS3 game, but it was remastered for the PlayStation 4's launch window. Naughty Dog's masterpiece had already established new standards for storytelling and games, but its PlayStation 4 version became a system seller that demonstrated Sony's commitment to mature, narrative-driven experiences. The Last of Us succeeded because it treated its zombies apocalypse setting with unprecedented seriousness and emotional weight.
Yeah, I mean, they had identity power. You know, unlike just Nintendo only having it, Sony was improving their identity power after the PS3 era, like definitely towards the end.
Joel and Ellie's relationship felt authentic because it was built on shared trauma, and there is no surprise that the game has been remastered one too many times. The God of War reboot represented perhaps the most successful franchise reboot in gaming history. Santa Monica Studio took Kratos, a character defined by rage and vengeance, and transformed him into a more complex father figure struggling with his past while trying to be a better parent than his own father was. The technical achievement was staggering. The entire game was presented as a single continuous shot without traditional loading screens or cuts, which created unprecedented immersion. The combat system perfectly balanced accessibility and depth. The Leviathan axe was a lot of fun to use, with throwing and recall mechanics that felt both powerful and
Got a
precise.
platinum on both.
The axe's connection to Norse mythology, its contrast with Kratos' traditional blaze of chaos, and its role in environmental puzzles made it central to both gameplay and narrative. The relationship between Kratos and Atreus drove every aspect of the game. Their conversations revealed character development naturally. Atreus' archery was useful, but it mainly reinforced his growth throughout the game. The tension between Kratos and Atreus was the emotional anchor of the game, and it delivered what I believe to be the best game of the PS4 generation. Naughty Dog's Uncharted 4: A Thief's End served as Nathan Drake's farewell while showcasing everything the studio had learned about.
Okay, I liked Uncharted 4, but I felt like it was the least gameplay out of all the series, and it was more of a movie than it was a game. But when you had gameplay, it was amazing, and this was an amazing game, but it didn't hit me like Uncharted 2 did. Obviously, that was the peak, and then even 3, that was amazing too. But yeah, I felt like 4, it wasn't as memorable as 2 and 3, but it was better than 1 in certain ways. I don't know. So he's pretty much going through here to kind of like explain, these are games. Obviously, we got Horizon, we got Spider-Man, we got Infamous, and guess what, guys? That's what I mean. Sony had a lot of good first-party games, and you think about Bloodborne. You know what I mean? All those games that were coming out, and Microsoft just had their series just keep on going down and down. Halo was not good. Gears 4 was whatever. Forza kept its peak, but everything else was kind of like they didn't have much. So we can skip ahead a little bit here and get more to other things like Bloodborne. Hey man, I got a platinum on that too. I by the way, I platinumed all these games. You guys know I almost have 60 platinums. We're going to get to this next part because we know about those games. So, but yeah, if you think about all those games he's going to be naming, like Microsoft had nothing to counter that. The whole generation.
PlayStation as a platform where exclusives meant excellent. And that is also the reason as to why the PS5 and its lack of exclusives has become a problem for this generation's console. The PS4 set such a high standard with its exclusive game catalogue, and the PS5 simply hasn't been able to replicate it. Victory, however, wasn't without its complications and blind spots. Sony's dominance during the PlayStation 4 generation didn't prevent them from making their own missteps that could have derailed their success. Sony's approach to backward compatibility during the PS4 generation wasn't exactly consumer friendly. Microsoft made original Xbox and Xbox 360 games playable on Xbox One through impressive engineering and consumer-friendly policies. Sony relegated PlayStation's 30-year software library to a poorly executed streaming service. PlayStation Now launched a Sony solution to that problem. but the service felt designed more for Sony's business interest than consumer needs. The subscription model meant that players could stream older PlayStation titles. The streaming technology required high-speed internet connections that many people simply didn't have access to, which meant that they couldn't use the service even if they wanted to. Input lag also made games feel horrible and unresponsive to play. The game catalogue itself also wasn't great. Major PlayStation exclusives were often missing, and most of the game on offer weren't something anyone was interested in. Xbox One players could put in the Xbox 360 discs and play enhanced version of classic games at no additional cost. The feature was presented as a celebration of Xbox gaming heritage rather than a revenue opportunity. Phil Spencer's ascension to head of Xbox marked a fundamental culture shift that would position Microsoft for long-term success, at least that's what it seemed like. Xbox Game Pass launched in 2017 and represented the most significant innovation in gaming distribution since probably digital downloads. The Netflix for games model provided incredible value. For $9.99 monthly and later $14.99 for Game Pass Ultimate, subscribers gained access to over 100 games, including day one access to all Microsoft first-party releases. The math was simple. Game Pass cost less than a single new game but provided access to hundreds of titles. More importantly, Game Pass changed gaming behaviour in positive ways. Players were more likely to try games outside their usual preferences, leading to discoveries they may never have made. The day one inclusion of major exclusives like Forza, Gears of War, Halo and many others proved immediate justification for subscription costs while demonstrating Microsoft's commitment to the service. Unlike Sony's approach to selling exclusives at premium prices, Microsoft was training consumers to view their major releases as service benefits rather than individual purchases. The service's success attracted third-party publishers who saw Game Pass as a way to extend the profitable lifespan of older games while generating revenue from titles that had exhausted their traditional sales potential. Publishers could earn guaranteed payments for Game Pass inclusion while potentially discovering new audiences for the franchises. Microsoft's aggressive studio acquisition strategy represented a long-term investment in exclusive content that acknowledged their first-party weakness during the Xbox One generation. The Bethesda acquisition for $7.5 billion was particularly significant, bringing established franchises like The Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, I always thought that was like, okay, that's an insane acquisition, but that's something you can get a lot out of. And it's not ending up turning out as fruitful as I wanted it to be, and it is definitely underwhelming. Considering the power of Bethesda and knowing what they were able to pull when it comes to sales, impact, longevity, and stuff like that. Right now, it's just not showing the way that I wanted it to show. Starfield is still underwhelming, but hopefully it can get a turnaround. That would actually be nice. I would like that, but who knows if that's going to happen. But I know they're going to try that in 2026 with the Switch 2 version and the PlayStation 5 version and the PS5 Pro version, obviously, and whatever else is going to be getting that update also on Steam and whatever else on Xbox.
Fallout and Doom under Microsoft's umbrella, while adding respected development talent across multiple studios. The deal signalled that Microsoft was willing to make substantial investments to compete with Sony's first-party advantages. These acquisitions were structured to preserve creative independence while providing financial security. Studios maintain their cultural identities and development philosophies while gaining access to Microsoft's resources and technology. The approach suggested that Microsoft had learned from previous integration failures that had damaged acquired talent. The PlayStation 4's triumph over Xbox One was decisive, a generation-defining victory that left no doubt about the winner. Unlike the 7th generation's complex split between Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, the 8th generation had a clear champion and obvious explanations for their success. Sony achieved this dominance through a perfect storm of factors that may never align again. Microsoft's catastrophic Xbox One reveal created an opening that Sony exploited. PlayStation 4's superior hardware delivered immediate, measurable advantages over the Xbox One. The exclusive titles represent the culmination of decades of first-party investment, with multiple studios simultaneously reaching creative peaks that produced generation-defining experiences. The 8th generation of consoles will be remembered as the last console war. Xbox has all but given up and surrendered itself to PlayStation, with Xbox exclusive titles now making their way onto the PS5. Something that would seem absolutely absurd 10 years ago. Game Pass has gone from being one of the best deals in gaming to now looking like an absolute rip-off. That isn't worth the money. Xbox is at an all-time low, and the lack of competition is maybe why the PS5 is struggling too. Sony feel like they don't really need to do anything to win consumers over anymore. And that's a shame, because the big reason of why the PS4 was such a great console was that it was always trying to be better than the Xbox.
That does matter.
Competition is needed.
But Sony's improving now because they got Switch 2 in their face. So, I mean, we've seen that recently. $200 price drop down. They're improving. They're turning things around from what happened at the beginning of this year. It was not looking good coming out from the end of last year, and things are definitely looking better to that extent. But then it's not just that; it's the DRAM and SSD stuff that's coming. Yeah, it's all crazy. So this was a really good video, and it gives a highlight of what happened in full depth, and I thought I should do that. So let me know what you guys think about this. It's pretty much spot on. Good video, dude. Later, y'all. Enjoy.